You, Me and Tuscany, starring Halle Bailey and Regé-Jean Page, was just released in theaters April 2026, and we went to check it out.
All I'm going to say up front is this movie sells you a dream, a love story set on the backdrop of this beautiful Italian scenery, and I'm here for it. They understood the assignment with this rom-com.
Everybody is trying to say that rom-com's back. I guess they haven't been getting theatrical releases.
Well, everything got messed up around, the time of COVID and whatnot and the locked in. And then I really think it affected the movie industry because obviously nobody was going to theaters where everybody, is sitting in one room to be sucking up each other's air. But now that people are sort of back to going to theaters, I just think it's really hard because people got spoiled with the movie coming directly to streaming.
I don't know if that's part of it. I think that they moved the floor up. Now every movie has to make $100 million, $500 million, right? And they don't want to put out anything that's not going to do that. And traditionally, these don't do that.
Well, I mean, I just think that rom-coms are always going to be really popular in stereotypically, but especially with women. I don't know a lot of women who don't love a good rom-com. Think about all of these holiday movies like Hallmark Channel and whatever, just the same thing as kind of the romance novels that people, the kind of just these love stories, these fantasy love stories that people would read back in the day and maybe still now, I don't know. Let me go to the comments and let me know if you still read like Harlequin romances or whatever, if they even still make those. But anyway, but with these kinds of movies, they just make you feel good and, happy, even though they're selling you the dream, that going in and they're really enjoyable. And I think that not enough of these movies are made, and especially not enough of these movies that, have black leads and stuff like that, because as we'll talk about, there are just so many different nuances and other things that become relatable when the characters are, part of your culture, right? So just in case you plan on seeing it in the theaters, we'll let you know when we're going to spoil it. So basically, the whole movie is about this free-spirited young, she's a cook, but she went to culinary school, okay? Her mother was a chef, and she went to culinary school, and her name is Anna. That's the character that Halle Bailey is playing, right? And she just decides that she's going to become this squatter in this Tuscan villa that's owned by a man that she barely knows, right? And it leads to this whole new world of adventure, lies, and love when she meets Michael, who is the cousin of the guy who owns the villa.
Brother cousin.
Well, brother cousin, yes. So that is the kind of premise. So we won't ruin it anymore for you on that. But just so you guys know, Will Packer Productions actually, produced the film. And it was directed by Heit Cheri, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her last name. So I just thought, Will Packer, I assumed at first that he was going to be directing it or something, but no, it's his production company that helped to put this out. So, well, I like the fact that there was just this touchstone to Black culture, at least, since you have these two Black leads and you don't have like other people supposing how, Black folks might act through stereotypes or whatever like that, right? And the director, Kat, she actually is half Italian. And so I also, and I don't know if this made any difference, but I would think so, at least on a cultural level with how the families act. But the Italian family and the Italian people when they're in Tuscany. But I like that they also had that touch point too. And I'm sure that they had some people who were like, oh, this is how it would go. This is what a tourist area, all of the consultants. But still, I think that when you're able to maintain and stay true to the perspective of different cultures in these films, that makes the film better and certainly more enjoyable to people who are within that culture. But I'll also say this film is still very American. You know what I mean? Even though reggae is British and, the movie takes place in Italy. So let's talk about the cast a little bit more. We have Halle Bailey as Anna. We have Regé-Jean Page as Michael Calvani as Lorenzo, and Lorenzo de Moura as Matteo, and Aziza Scott as Claire, and Nia Vardalos as Miss Dunn, Isabella Ferrari as Gabriella, who's Matteo's mother, and Emmanuel Paca as Giuseppe. So the cast is not really huge, which I do like, right? Because there's not all of these other people in their storylines to learn. We just covered the movie Takers, and I'll link that in the description. But Takers had a whole bunch of characters, and they were trying to explain all of their backstories and stuff like that. You know, when you get to the point of having like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters in a movie that all have their special stories that are not just supporting characters, then I think it complicates the story. But this movie, definitely you want to hear more about.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation via Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. So did you like the film?
It's all right, you know.
Well, I really liked the film, actually. And I liked it, like I mentioned before, you know, because it had black leads. The acting was pretty solid. I mean, okay, let's just be clear. This is not going to be an Oscar contender. And I think that with most of these rom-coms, you go into it sort of knowing this. So it's not like you're going to be disappointed by that. It delivers on what you would expect from a rom-com. So if you like rom-coms, you are probably going to like this movie. So what didn't you like about the movie?
That, you know, it's a very simple story, and, you know, the plot holes that are required for it to work. And then basically all of the actual stuff that people nowadays will call as, I don't know, what they claim they don't like about the other movies, right? Oh, because this character, the decisions the characters make you question their, you know, their characters.
Yeah, the character of the character. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
But it's those things that don't let you all the way, it don't let me all the way, you know, just accept it.
Right. And we will talk about those plot holes in the spoiler section. But, you know, I guess if it was one thing I didn't like, I have to agree with you on the plot holes. But for me, those even weren't that big of a deal because I'm not looking at this film with the same critical eye. I'm worried about how is this film? Is it giving me the feels? Is there good romantic chemistry between the leads?
Yeah, and doesn't that inform what you think is romantic? The characters, how they got together, why they're together. You know,
I mean, on some level, but at the same time, if I'm not analyzing the plot and I'm like, ooh, I think they look.
Not the plot. If you think two people are in a relationship and they're both married and then they get together, are you going to.
Okay, so you would feel differently perhaps about that. Although some would argue, which this movie was up for an Oscar, the movie Unfaithful, which came out in 2003, which starred Diane Lane, she got an Academy Award nomination for that. Although that movie wasn't a rom-com, it did sort of have that same scenario.
Yeah, but that's what I talk about all the time, where that's what's required in romance and love stories for them to be good, though, right? It has to be, you know, a lot of times, you know, the movies we talk about, it's that, oh, somebody is with another person and then they have to leave that person to go with this other person.
Right. And we sort of talked about that a little bit. And recently we went back to revisit the movie Love and Basketball. And one of the commenters had said about this movie, like, oh, but you know, this movie, well, first of all, they told us, they said, well, you know, other creators, other people here on YouTube have this to say about the film. They say that it's a toxic love story, talking about love and basketball and everything. And the response that I give, number one, to these older films is that you kind of had to be there. And so to try to analyze the film through today's sensibilities is not going to give you the same gives. And the generation gap does matter. Although our feelings about it have evolved, the generation gap matters.
Yeah, which would be why these movies don't even exist, and especially for Black people anymore, right? Because if you're analyzing it that way, then you can't tell a love story at all. Right? Because of those elements that are required.
Yeah. So,
and when you do, then all you're doing is subscribing to what you claim was wrong and toxic in the older movies.
Right. So that definitely is, kind of a problem. But I would just say still back to this movie, I kind of didn't care. It's like with certain of these types of movies, you just throw all of that out of the window. You just want to go, does it give me the feels? I'm not even really caring too much about character analysis that much. Although I don't think that this one did a bad job of character, of the development of the character. I don't think it did a horrible job, but it is not like super deep. But it's relatable, I think, in terms of what leads this character to behave the way she does. Not that most of us would act this way, but I do think that there's an aspect of it that is relatable and certainly fantasy-like, right? Because also, for those of you who don't know, Regé-Jean Page, he was in the first season of Bridgerton. So there were a lot of people who were like, oh my gosh, he's not coming back for the second season. He was the number one best thing about the first season of Bridgerton. So if you saw that, then this is where you've seen him before, as well as in other films and shows and stuff like that. I know y'all know because you've heard me say it enough times. We do actually have Axiom Amnesia merch. And one of my favorites is this Axiom Amnesia logo hoodie. And it's just so cute. So if you guys want to support the channel, this is a great way to do it. Go ahead and visit axiom.app where you'll find all of our merch and different things, different styles. All of that stuff is there for you to take a look at and hopefully support the channel by buying. What did you think about the idea of this culture clash? Because that's one thing we also point out, so we have two Black people in Italy and she's an American in Italy and he is, I think he was British born, but mostly raised in Italy,
well,
right?
Part of the character, Anna, she was kind of studied, right? So then she goes into it kind of knowing it. So she's not completely shocked by the culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you go there and then you're interacting with a family and I guess just not being of that place. You're like, oh, it's so beautiful and all this, right? So I think it was a culture mesh because you had the Italian, the white folks who seemed to be trying to mimic Black culture and language and that sort of thing, right? And I don't know if it's on purpose because the Anna was Black, or was it just because of how
American culture and Black culture particularly?
Yes, it's spread nowadays. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they really show much clash things there, and I think it was more of a mesh sort of a thing.
Yeah. And what did you think about the cultural references? Because I liked the way that she seemed to be somewhat knowledgeable. So it wasn't like one of those things where she gets there and she's like, oh my gosh, this is Italy. Because I happened to see a YouTube video and the person, was it a YouTube video? Anyway, it was on YouTube. I don't know if it was advertising something else. But anyway, there was this Black girl and she winds up in Italy and she's like, oh my gosh, I am in like the ghetto of Italy, right? And it looked like a very narrow Italian street and whatever. And so basically she was trying to say, oh no. And then she went in to try some pizza at a place and she was like, look at all this grease on this pizza. I'm gonna eat it. But and I just hate when people go someplace else and then just start clowning on the culture or whatever is going on over there. If you took your butt over there, if you don't want to be over there, then go back where you came from. Go back home. But like to go is so rude. It is just so very rude. And, back in the day when I used to live in Mexico, I think I told you guys I lived there for a few years. One of the things that I thought was just so annoying about other Americans who I would meet is they were constantly trying to influence the culture of the small towns that we lived in and make it where it's more American. Well, you guys should do it like this. Nah, they should do it how they do it because you living over here in Mexico. And if you want it to be like it is back in America, then take your butt over there, Like, I don't know. I've always felt like it was just really rude to do that to other people's cultures. But anyway, I
don't
digress.
know, because I think that's the way people see it when folks come here, right? This is just the American way and don't be trying to have us do stuff the way you do it.
That's a good point. This is the American way and that's kind of the way you do it.
Many folks in the U.S. want assimilation.
Yeah.
And of course, people want assimilation, but I don't know what's the ideal balance, right?
Well, and what I find is that people go where their culture is. So you find that people will group together. Well, yeah, people will group together. So in most places where you have an immigrant community, whether that's like me when I lived in Mexico, right? You know, I chose to go where I knew other Americans would be, other people who spoke English would be, because my Spanish was not that great. And so I wanted to do that and not have it feel so completely foreign. I also didn't want to live in a resort area. And plus, you know, you're living in resort areas, that's expensive. So yeah, I mean, that's the compromise. But I just think it's just wild when you're, you know, it's one thing if you're like, hey, I have shops that I can shop at that have my cultural foods in them and stuff like that when you're someplace else. But it's a whole nother thing to just be trying to go someplace and just change every little thing. But I did like that. Now, as far as the cultural references, there is this Anna's good friend. And so she she is kind of what you would think is sort of stereotypical, but with a twist is how I would call it, you know, because it's like in her case, Anna's friend is completely stable, very well meaning, and isn't actually, she's not ignorant, you know. I would, and in fact, I think that she is a lot more stable and more well-rounded than Anna, even though her presentation is very much kind of like that of a loudmouth.
Yeah. And it's I guess it's kind of a new take on it though, right? Because I think it's more of the younger generation where you have your feisty friend who is trying to kind of how maybe they would talk this way to each other, right? But one of them is, you know, kind of flailing, and then another one is trying to whip her into shape and stuff and giving her that stern talk. And it's kind of like Rod and Get Out, right? And, you know, so what happens is this character, Anna, she goes off and, you know, she's going to go to Italy and stuff. And then her friend, Claire, right, is basically saying, you know, what are you doing? Don't go do this. You know what I'm saying? And she kind of addresses the get out of it all with an exact mention of Get Out. Right. In there too. Right. So it's like kind of really like the Rod character.
Yeah, you know, but the difference I feel like is between her and that Rod character is that Rod is the stereotype that we've seen. Well, I shouldn't say the stereotype. Rod is who we've seen before, whereas Claire is, I think, a modernized version, right? Because it used to be when we had the loudmouth friend in the past, the loudmouth friend was also not just loudmouth. She was ignorant and she had all of these negative stereotypes associated with her in these films. Versus now, you have these characters who are very much going to sit in their culture. You know, whatever that culture is, they're not going to be assimilating when they're interacting with their friends. But at the same time, there isn't this need to like whitewash them.
Right. That's what I think of as Rod, right? I don't see the difference.
Well,
or what other characters were like that before Rod? Because we're talking about male here.
Yeah. I don't know. We'd have to go to the comments. You guys have a pretty good breadth of movies that you've seen. Maybe you guys can think of some characters like this.
Off top. Yeah.
Want us to break down the movie of your choice? You choose the film, we do the analysis, and you're credited on screen as the executive producer. The link to grab one is in the description, and our deep dive on demand is only $75. So do you think that the movie is worth watching in the theater or wait for streaming?
Every movie is worth watching in theater. Right? Unless it's just, I don't know, maybe not a low budget movie. Yeah. But if they spend some budget on the movie, it's probably worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say every movie is worth watching, although I can't think of one that I would just go, oh no. But this movie, it kept my attention pretty much for the whole time. One thing about going to the movie nowadays is that it forces you to not be looking at your phone. I will say, though, we were literally the only ones in the theater. We saw it, you know how movies come out on Friday. We saw it on Thursday evening, and literally we were the only ones in the movie theater. I don't even know how this theater is going to just stay open, because the last few times, even when we went to see Wicked, we were one of a handful of people. Like, there's hardly ever any people in there, which I actually enjoy. Wicked? I prefer.
Which Wicked?
The second Wicked.
Well, we were super early for that one.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we did. Oh, because they opened up that show a couple days. Yeah, because we went, I think, to see it on a Wednesday. Before the Friday when it came out. With this one, we saw it on Thursday, and I don't know. So a lot of you guys probably haven't seen this film. I definitely think that this movie is worth going to the theater if you like the rom-coms. If this is your type of movie, you're going to like this movie. So I think it's worth going. But if you wait for streaming, that's going to be good too. But yeah, I think you'll like this. So we are definitely going to get into the spoilers of this movie right now. So let's talk about first what all happens in the movie. Anna is a house sitter. And so the film opens with her and we see her like waking up in the morning and she's in New York City in this high rise condo. And it's just, oh my gosh, amazing, opulent lifestyle. And we see her with this little dog and she's walking out of a place with a doorman and all that. And then we realize when she gets caught by the person who owns the place that she's a house sitter. And she's been basically cosplaying this woman's life, wearing this woman's clothes, including her like bodysuit that she was like, were you wearing my bodysuit, my lingerie that snaps at the crotch? She was like, I was going to wash it. Girl, listen. So this is how the movie starts. And I thought it was pretty funny. And so then when she obviously gets fired, when this woman comes back early and finds her wearing her clothes and stuff, all she was there was this house sitter for this dog. And she's over there wearing this woman's clothes and pretending to be this rich woman. So then she has her friend Clara, who works at a nearby hotel, like a really nice hotel. And so she's going there and she's probably going to try to get a room for a night because she has like no place to stay at this point. And so then while she's at the bar of this hotel, she winds up meeting Matteo. And so Matteo turns out to be this Italian guy, and they hit it off pretty well and they're talking and everything. And he tells her all about his life and how he left Italy because his family basically has money and how he built this villa in Italy, but his family wants him to take over the family business. He doesn't want to do that. He's in real estate and stuff like that. And so he's in America just doing his thing and living his life. And so they go up to his room because, you know, it's about to, you know, bow chicka wow wow. But by the time she goes to freshen up and comes out, this dude is asleep.
He didn't want it bad enough.
So she opens up his phone while she, you know, he's asleep, and she's looking at pictures that he had like shown her.
First, in the comments, I'm going to propose this thing. Cheri likes to do the summary of the films, right? Go through that. And each step of the way, let me know if y'all want me to give strikes to the character when they do some stuff that's just a strike against them. And because this is two already. The crotch thing, right? And character flaw. And then she went through his phone for this stranger and she put a phone to his face and you unlocked it with facial recognition, whatever it's called. And you're very creepy, lady.
So as an example of
what weird character.
As an example of what it would be like if Heit does this, we'll do it on this film, and then you can let us know if you like this approach. So yeah, that definitely was kind of sketch because like you don't even know this dude, but she goes into his phone, she looks at the picture, a selfie that the two of them had taken together, and then she looks at, you know, kind of like the sunset and just how beautiful Italy is, some pictures of where he came from, and she's scrolling through his stuff and she's just like, Now, one of the things he tells her when they were having the whole conversation is kind of, you know, she explains her situation. So we find out that her mother was a chef and she was in culinary school talking about Anna, and then her mother became sick and subsequently died. And after her mother died, she didn't want to cook anymore. She didn't want to do any of that stuff. And then she just decided to become a house sitter. And so she clearly has kind of gone away from anything that would remind her of her mother. So this is her kind of big backstory thing that's going on. And so Matteo tells her, hey, look, I think you should go to Italy, because she had planned a trip to Tuscany with her mother. But, you know, then her mother wound up getting sick and dying and they never went. And so, you know, he's like, I think you should go. So in her mind, she says multiple times in the film, it's basically like he was just inviting me to come to his house. But she doesn't really have that idea in her mind at this moment. So then she stays and sleeps in the bed with him and everything. He sleeps, she sleeps, nothing happens. And then she wakes up the next morning. He's gone. He's left a note like, order whatever you want to order. But, you know, I had to take a flight and leave, but it was nice meeting you, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so
she ordered everything.
She orders like everything on the menu. Like, and if you know, she has another strike for that. How many strikes are we keeping up with this?
No,
so
right
far,
now.
That's the third strike. I'll keep up with the strikes. So that's the third strike against her. And So she she orders all this food, she eats the food, and then she's just trying to figure out what to do. And then she calls and tells her friend, hey, look, I have like $500 in my bank account and I have the ticket to Italy. And I think I'm just going to go to the ticket to go to Italy. I'm just going to go there. And her friend is like, girl, you ain't got nowhere to stay. Like, look, this is not like really the best decision. I just don't think you should do it. She's like, well, Matteo, the guy I met, he's basically told me I, should basically follow her dreams and go do this thing. So she's committed to going to do it. So she goes to Tuscany. And her intent when she goes to Tuscany is that she's going to just rent a hotel room, right? But then soon after she gets there, she finds out that there's this festival that's happening in Tuscany and there are just no hotel rooms. You know how it is. Anytime there's a festival or something going on someplace, you're not getting a hotel room like the same day. So she's going around the town, looking around. She's really impressed. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous place. And so she goes into this little, I don't know if it's a bistro, but, a place where you can get food, a restaurant. So she goes in there.
I don't think it's a restaurant. It's I don't know, a sandwich shop with the Italian name.
Yes. Okay. So she goes in there and she recognizes the sandwich and she's like, oh, is that a, shishi fufu, some name that she's very familiar with. So this is informing us that her character really, she's been to culinary school. She's very familiar with all of these exotic foods that, are just not, that the basic ones of us probably don't know. Right.
Yeah. And that was her dream, right? She wanted to go and open a restaurant in Italy.
So she goes, so she's in there and she sees this sandwich she wants. It's the last sandwich. Who busts in but the character of Michael? That's Reggae's character, right? And so he busts in, he cuts in front of her, even though she's talking to the woman. And he's like, hey, he brings some wine and he barters with the lady. And the lady's like, oh, here's your sandwich. And so he leaves with her sandwich. And she's like, I was about to order that sandwich. I wanted that sandwich. And he was like, well, too bad. So then they have this interaction. It's the typical trope where, enemies turn, I wouldn't even call them enemies, but, you don't like the person at first and then ultimately you wind up falling in love with them, right? So he's like, yeah, I'm gonna eat this sandwich. So she follows him outside and she's like, that's my sandwich. And he's like, no, it ain't, blah, 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 and they have an exchange. And then he winds up giving her half the sandwich because he was like, look, I'll bring you a sandwich later. Where are you staying at? And then he was like, don't tell me you done came here and you ain't got nowhere to stay.
If you go somewhere else, don't do nothing like this.
Following somebody out, acting a fool.
Come on.
But she was mad. So anyway, he gives her half the sandwich and she eats her half because he's like, don't tell me you ain't got nowhere to stay. And he was like, oh, well, let me give you this sandwich. So he gave her the other half after he had eaten half the sandwich. And so then she goes and she decides, all right, I got to figure something out. She's calling places to still try to find a hotel. She can't find anything. And by the way, there's this funny character in here who is the cab driver. And the cab driver who took her from where she was kind of dropped off to get to Tuscany, he was very nice. And he's this quirky, weird character who's always eating. And he is kind of like the voice of reason, and who is going to kind of show up along the way as she needs him. So anyway, it's getting dark. She doesn't have anywhere to stay. And then she thinks of Matteo. She's like, well, he did kind of invite me to his house. Now, Matteo says his house is empty and he's not there right now, but he had it built and all this. So she goes to his house. The house is huge. It's beautiful and it is empty. And so she looks outside and she finds a key in like near a flower pot or something. Okay, this is the oldest thing in the book. Y'all tell me, are y'all leaving keys to y'all's house outside the door? Did you ever used to do that? Did people do that back in the day where you were? I turned to you in the movie and I asked you, which was really nice that we were the only people in the theater because then we were able to kind of talk without feeling bad if we had something to say. But yeah, I asked you about this. And you said yes, that there were people who do that.
It's so nice you can have an app that does it now, right?
Oh, if you have an automatic lock,
yeah. Yeah, that, or a code or something. So
yeah, there are things besides that physical key, but that was the kind of thing you saw in movies and TV shows that you just didn't do in real life. But apparently there are people who do that in real life. Go to the comments. Do y'all do that? Let us know. All right, so she basically finds the key. She goes in, she sees how beautiful the place is, and she just literally makes herself at home. So she goes to sleep, and then the next morning she wakes up, and then she's like, "Ooh, I'm gonna get going with my day or whatever."
Oh, I forgot to buzz her.
What?
Yeah, she went in the house. Like,
Yeah,
you just went over there, and then you basically broke into this person's house.
So she's got 4 strikes against her already. So the next morning, she hears something. Who's coming in the house? Some people are coming in. They look like they're coming to clean. She hears this man outside. That's Giuseppe. She hears this man outside singing, and he's singing in Italian. I mean, it's just every stereotype you've ever seen about Italy or whatever. And it's wonderful, and she's loving the whole experience. And then some people start coming in the house, and she's like, "What is going on?" And this woman is like, "Oh, I hear something, and I know somebody's there." She climbs out the window and tries to slide down not the gutter. What do you call that?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Part of the gutter. Anyway, so she tries to slide down, and then she falls. And then they see her. What? And she's like, "Oh, and they're like, 'Who are you? We're calling the police.'" So then she gets inside, and she's sitting there, and we find out this is Matteo's mother and grandmother, who are clearly, they just come there to keep the place up, right? They come to clean up ever so often. She was the unlucky one who happens to come the day that they show up, or the night before. So then the day she was looking through all of his crap in his house, and she found a huge solitaire diamond ring. She puts the diamond ring on. So she slept with this ring or whatever on. So they notice she's got this ring on, and the grandmother says, "Huh, you're wearing our ring." Now they also have, says, "She's wearing my ring. Why are you wearing it?" The mother notices the ring, and the mother's like, "Oh my goodness, you must be, getting married to Matteo. Oh my gosh." Because we also know that Matteo basically abandoned his family for a year. They wanted him to take over the family business. He's like, "Nah, I don't want to do that." He just leaves town and he bounces.
He left the country.
Not only town, he left the country, went to America, and said, "I'm going to follow my dreams." So this is how the misunderstanding or that lie gets started, right? That she's the fiance. A lot of you miss videos because you're not getting your YouTube notifications, and we have fixed this. So subscribe to our mailing list for personalized notifications of all of our videos as they're released across all of our channels, because this isn't just our only channel. Make sure you're subscribed to all of our channels too, and then you'll get an email. The link is in the description. And so she doesn't know what to do, but she just wants to get out of the jam. So she's like, yes, I'm his fiance or whatever. Now they also have what appears to be a language barrier, although it looks like everybody in the family except the grandmother can speak English. So they're talking or whatever, and then they're like, "Well, the police is showing up." So the police arrive, and once they realize that she's the fiance, then they're like, "Oh well, no problem. Police, don't worry about it. Don't arrest her. Look, it's Matteo's fiance." So everybody's all happy and everything like that. So then they eventually leave, and she's thinking, all right, now the coast is clear. I can get the heck out of here. She calls the cab driver to come and pick her up, and she's just about to bounce. She's about to go back to New York. And they get in the cab. They're driving and everything like that. And he's on the phone with the people because, of course, the people are speaking in Italian, and her Italian is not that good. And so he's arguing with them. "Well, what do you mean she can't get the flight back and stuff?" Because she had the ticket that was already paid for. Remember, she only has like $500 in her account. So they're like, "Oh, well, the change fee is going to be more. She doesn't have the money for the change fee for her ticket. But if you wait 5 days, you don't have to pay this." So ultimately, she winds up realizing that she can't leave because she doesn't have the money to leave. And then the cab driver is like, "Look, you got a few options here. You could call your friend maybe and get the money, or you can, do something else. But you could also just go back there and tell them the truth." And she's like, "Yeah, I guess that's what I got to do." So he drives her back because she's been invited to have a meal with the family. So she's going to go over there and tell them that she's not really the fiance and that she just didn't have any place to stay. And she pretty much doesn't know Matteo that well. And so she gets over there, but the family is just so welcoming. This is where she meets all the rest of the family. Matteo's got a sister who's married with a couple kids and a husband. And, Matteo's also got a younger brother who is always recording video and stuff like, "Look at the American." I thought that these jokes about being American were very, very funny, that they were telling. And then, she meets Mateo's father and stuff. So it's just like this whole thing. It's wonderful. And so then we get to the point where she's like, oh my gosh. And she gets ready to do it. And they're like, well, where is your ring? Why aren't you wearing the ring? And then she can't tell the truth in this moment, or chooses not to. And she's like, oh, I just take my ring off sometimes when I'm fiddling. I like to play with it or something. They're like, oh, okay. And so her opportunity has passed for the moment to tell the truth. And so she just buys into it and everything. She's going to sit down to a meal with them. And then, whoa, look who shows up at the meal, though. It's Michael. And we find out that Michael is Mateo's cousin. Now, how you're asking, this is Italian family and they're white. And then you got, Michael, who is black. And how does this work? So apparently Michael's mother was the sister of Mateo's mother, and that his parents died and tragically. And so they adopted Michael. So basically Mateo's parents adopted. So this is not only his actual blood cousin, but this is his brother as well. Mateo's brother. It's his bruzin. So
his cother.
His cother. Bruzin sounds better. Cother. So then we're like, oh man, because they're still, she was looking at him at first, but then they start to see each other and they're kind of feeling each other a little bit. And but at the same time, she also felt like he was really rude and she didn't want to be bothered with him. So he's been tasked with taking her around the vineyard, because he runs this vineyard as his part of the family business, is all of this land where he's got a vineyard. And he's to show her around because they're going to get married, and they're going to get married at, of course, the vineyard. And so she's looking all around and everything, and their chemistry is growing, and she's in the middle of this lie and all that. So you got that whole dynamic happening or whatever. So then basically what happens is they just grow closer and closer until at one point, guess who shows the heck back up? Mateo. Mateo shows up, and previous to this, we had also met a woman who was being very snarky toward Anna. Well, we find out the reason why is because she is Mateo's ex-fiance. So when he bounced and left and went to America, he left his fiance too. And she's like, oh, you wearing the ring? And so she doesn't like Anna because, this is like her rival. And so it's very awkward because Anna has now spent time with Michael. She's feeling Michael. Michael is feeling her. Mateo is showing up. But when he shows up, she's sleeping in bed and he wakes up and he's like, Anna, what are you doing at my crib? She's like, well, you basically invited me. No. He did not invite you to this house for you to break in and be telling his family that you his fiance. So he's mad because basically the way he found out was that his ex-fiance called him and told him, who is this girl over here that this black girl that you're supposed to be getting married to? And
he
I
don't
thought
answer no calls from his family or nothing.
No.
But this woman, he does.
Yes. And so after that happens, then Anna is in a pinch and he's like, well, look, my family hates me and they're all mad at me and stuff. Mind you, when Anna shows up, the family was like, oh my goodness, she's the one who's going to bring Mateo back. Mateo is coming back. So that's another thing. Anna had lied and said that Mateo was coming back
so
to
is kind of Jesus or Mary?
Shut up. Why would you say that?
Because they're waiting for the return and she's doing it.
Well, so she lied to them and said he was coming back. And really, he wasn't coming back until the fiance called and was like, get over here because it's this chick over here talking about she your fiance. So after all of that happens, then Mateo is like, look, my family already hates me because I done bounced. And if you leave, they done fell in love with you. And if you leave, they're going to blame it on me. So you need to come with me to tell my family that you on some BS and that we ain't engaged, and just basically to tell the truth because they're going to be mad at you. I don't want them mad at me. So she goes over there with him to tell the truth and whatever. And then she gets ready to tell the truth. And then he sees that his family is just so in love with her and how wonderful they're being to him and welcoming their being to him, which, they hadn't been this way because he didn't want to take the family business.
His daddy is approving.
Yes, his father is approving and everything. And then he can't give that up, that acceptance from his family. So then he's like, oh, yeah, don't tell the truth, basically. He makes it clear in the moment that he wants to go with the lie. And so Anna's like, okay, this is confusing, but all right. So then after that, when they're talking later, Mateo is like, look, why don't we get this a go? We should just try because, we had a little chemistry anyway. And, and Anna is not interested in doing that, but she's caught in between a rock and a hard place because now she done got in with the family. She knows the family. She likes them and it's nothing against them, but she can't tell the truth in this moment because now it's not just her lie. It's her and Mateo's lie together. And on top of that, she's feeling Michael, his brusin. And so it just is getting more and more complicated, which like any good rom-com or any good comedy that's like this would be. And so then you have the tensions going on between Mateo and Michael because they always were competitive with one another as brusins, but especially over this woman. And so then fast forward to the point where it's the last day of the festival and Mateo's family runs a restaurant. And each one of his family members helps to cook and do whatever, in this restaurant. And Mateo's father winds up falling and hurting himself and he can't, cook. And so they're like, oh, well, Anna, you can cook. So why don't you come and you can help with that? So then Anna gets there in the morning to help the day so that they can prepare for this big meal that they always serve on the last day of the festival. And then the father isn't even there because he wasn't feeling so good and whatever. So Anna is there left alone with this challenge of cooking. Remember, she doesn't cook anymore. So now this renews her dedication to becoming a chef. And she's just realizes that she's where she belongs. She prepares this meal that is approved by the father and everything is wonderful. But while she's preparing the meal, Mateo isn't showing up. Why isn't Mateo showing up? Because he done went out and he is seen by Michael, his brusin, kissing his fiance, his ex-fiance.
The real fiance.
The real fiance, basically, yes. They still love each other. They're kissing out on the street, just in the open, even though he is supposed to be engaged. And everybody knows it because everybody in the town, it's a small town, everybody in the town knows Anna and is like, oh, Anna, and hey, Anna. She like, how all these people know me when, it's a small town. So, of course, Michael doesn't like this because he's like, Anna is over here, in here cooking for your family and doing all this stuff and you out in these streets. So he doesn't like that. They wind up having a whole confrontation between the two of them. They start fighting and each other over what's going on. The family is witnessing the fight and so is Anna. And Anna breaks it up. And that's when Anna confesses like, look, it's not what you think. He's not the bad guy. I'm the bad person because I lied and, I am not who you think I am, basically. So upon finding this out, the family is, of course, shocked. Mateo is vindicated in the moment. And Michael is kind of like disappointed. And then Anna, walks off crying. The way they had her walking off reminded me of the way that Styx was crying at the end of the movie Some Kind of Wonderful. If you know, go to the comments if y'all know Some Kind of Wonderful, another rom-com teen coming of age type of movie from way back in the day. That movie came out in the 80s. It starred Mary Stuart Masterson and Eric Stoltz. Anyway, that is, if you like these older 80s type of movies that still are surrounding kind of the whole I'm in love with somebody and I can't have them and they want somebody else type of feels, this was a good movie from way back in the day. If you've seen the movie, go to the comments and let us know. So after she confesses, she's walking away crying. Nobody runs after her. So I do appreciate that they didn't, do the thing where, okay, Michael now realizing that he could have the girl runs after her and stuff. No, he does not run after her.
They basically did that.
In the moment, no, she walks off.
No, not in the moment, but it's the same thing.
So the next day, so the cab driver picks her up and he's like, what happened? And she's like, oh, they found out and whatever. He's like, oh, okay. So we see her waiting at the bus stop, trying to catch her bus that's going to take her back to the airport after the cab driver has dropped her off.
Running after the bus.
And the bus pulls off. She's at the bus stop by herself. And she just is like, I can't win. And then who shows up but Mateo's grandmother? Turns out she could speak English the whole time. And she's like, look, in life, sometimes we screw up and whatever like that. But the older people had recognized that there was some chemistry going on between her and Michael. Right. And the grandmother basically says, go get your man.
She said, go tap her that ass.
She said, tap her that ass. And I thought that was so funny. That was hilarious.
That's very racist. It's a microaggression.
Well, but because they were doing these type of things the whole time. And again, it's unclear if it's just the effect of Black American culture on the world, or if they were doing all of this because
But that's
she was
what we
Black.
categorize. So like when you go to another culture and you do those things that are stereotypes, then it's just kind of like, yeah, you don't know no better, but you probably shouldn't be doing it, right?
Yeah, but there were people who I would meet that like in Mexico, and they would have limited English, and they would say things that were not Black people stuff.
Right.
But they would say things like reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or singing the national anthem, stuff like that.
But if it was stuff like this Ugandan said when I was overseas, he said, "Is she a nigga?"
Bruh.
You know what I'm saying? Like when it's something like that, or tap of that ass.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. But the Ugandan guy, at least he was Black,
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a thin line.
Yeah. It can be a thin line. And we can all be sensitive about our cultures and how other people receive, perceive, and reflect our culture back to us too.
Right. If they just start breakdancing in front of you, you're going to be like, what?
And just start pop locking and rapping. But yeah. So this happens. The grandma tells her, go get your man. So she decides to go to the vineyard. She is about to get Michael. The family is like, look, basically, we forgive you. So she's about to go get Michael. When she goes to the vineyard, of course, he's in, over by the grapes and whatever. Yes. And then she starts singing, Mario, Let Me Love You. Now, y'all know Halle Bailey can sing. And earlier in the film, this is reflecting back a point where, as part of the tradition of the family to forgive all previous sins, so to speak, or transgressions against offenses you may have committed, that they sing a song to the person they're going to marry, and then this is kind of like a forgiveness ritual, I guess you could say.
Right, and then they were trying to kind of walk through what the ceremony would be, and that's what Michael sang to Anna,
right,
in the beginning,
because he's posing as Mateo, who isn't there in that moment, right? And this is also where we realize even more that, they definitely are feeling each other. And at that point, that's when he had sung the Mario song, Let Me Love You. Yeah. And so, speaking of which, the music in the movie was pretty decent. And I don't know, are they trying to bring back soundtracks for movies that are not musicals? I don't know. Y'all go to the comments. What do you think? Because I loved back in the day when there was a good soundtrack.
Right? It's probably what they're doing.
Yeah, maybe so, because these were not original songs for the movie, but still. So, of course, he receives her singing this song or whatever. And for the first time in the film, they actually embrace and kiss. And boy, so the funny thing that keeps happening is because there are all these tours and whatever going on with the vineyard, people see them, in with the sprinklers on, all wet and kissing. And they're like, oh my gosh. And, so then there's some comedy that ensues related to the women who are watching this. Like, look, I want to be on that tour. What do I have to do to get that?
And I don't know how many men made it this far, but if you like Halle Bailey, her titties out this whole film.
Bruh. Okay. So that is one thing that I did wonder about the way she was dressed, because she was dressed pretty much like nobody else in the film. Now, part of this is like you brought whatever clothes you brought from home, but she was the most immodestly dressed person in the entire film. Whether it was boobs out, shoulders, and whatever, everybody else is fully clothed, and she is like either thigh, midriff out, or all of the above.
They did
at the
a
same
typical rom-com thing, right? The lead actress, you're gonna have to show some skin.
Yeah, I guess so. At any rate, though, of course, Halle Bailey is beautiful, and she looked amazing in this film, as did Regé-Jean Page. And so we came up with something new. It is called a bedtime binge playlist, and it is made up of our videos that you probably haven't seen yet, and they're videos from all of our channels. And so go ahead, go to the link in the description. When it's bedtime, get ready, get all cozy, put that binge playlist on, and then watch and binge our videos as you get ready for bed. I was just thinking to myself too, like as far as Halle Bailey, like her career is really kind of moving along, and I'm happy to see that some of the bumps in the road that she had encountered with her dealings with her baby daddy seemed to be in the rearview mirror for her, and didn't ruin her career, because some folks wondered whether it would, her stopping to have a baby and stuff like that. But it looks like things are okay. Of course, we don't know what opportunities may have been missed. But yeah, so of course they kiss at the end, and then we see I guess kind of like an epilogue, right? At the end, and they fast forward to the future. So Mateo gets back with his woman, and they're presumably going to be married. And then also we know that it's looking like Halle Bailey and Michael are going to be married. They want to be together and whatever. And so also she's a chef now at this family restaurant. So it really all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
You think they're going to stay together?
Yeah, because she ain't got nowhere to go. That's why she ended up there to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, but there are some other, like, some themes that would be good to talk about with this movie, and more discussion once you guys actually get a chance to see the film. But all in all, you know, I think we should think about, like, how it was for Anna, because their grief over their parents' loss caused them to behave differently. You know, Michael's character, he lost his parents and then he threw himself into their business, right? To try to make them proud. He wasn't interested in that before, but then he started trying to make them proud. Whereas Anna couldn't bring herself to do the thing. You know, she wanted to reject everything that had to do or would remind her of her mother, because her grief was still very much raw, you know, from her loss. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, added a little bit of depth, you know.
But there are some things that just didn't make sense.
Okay, let's talk about what didn't make sense.
Michael knew she didn't have a place to stay, and then when she goes over to the family, then it's just never brought up.
He doesn't have more questions about her situation.
And why she's there all of a sudden. And
yeah. And so to me, that is probably the biggest plot hole in the movie. But still, I mean, it doesn't ruin it for me. It's just one of the things I'm like, they could have done that a little bigger, or figured that out more.
And then the whole thing that her mama, you know, she gave up cooking because her mama died. Her mama was a chef, and she, like, I can't be by a stove because I feel my mama next to me, so I don't use stoves.
Yeah.
You need a whole bunch of therapy for that one. That's deep.
Well, she really did, because look, after this was happening, what she was doing was living other people's lives. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? She was just living other people's lives.
Yeah, but a lot of people do that. But the thing is, she's living other people's lives. That was her character before. She get out here to Italy, and she doesn't do that. She ain't taking no videos, ain't posting nothing about this glamorous life she's now living in Italy. That would be the first thing people who chronic posters online do. If you are online fronting wearing other people's clothes, if you show up at this villa, you that's what you're going to do.
They going to flex and show you where they are. They do it every time they get an Airbnb and be like, look, I moved into, I got the keys to my new place.
Why didn't she do that? And if she didn't think of it, one of Mateo brothers was doing that. You know, he was just posting, right?
Yeah.
You know, they tried to show that little culture
and they was
thing.
like, you got 3 followers.
Yeah. So then at the end, she, you know, when she had to cook for them, right? She added, you know, Southern shrimp and grits basically to their stuff, their cultural thing. So that's not an assimilation thing, but come on now.
Yeah.
If it's good, it's good, but I'm going to be like, nah, man, you ain't changing this gumbo for this big event.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, as far as being on the Italian family's end of receiving other cultural influences
the family
on there.
And the people who go to the festival every year.
Y'all, we talk about this all the time, and we were talking about gumbo in one of the previous videos, and how, you know, guarding of the culture and the culture of gumbo and whatever, you know, in the context of just the gumbo, just cultural attributes and stuff that you want to preserve and don't want other people to be diluting. And somebody in the comments had asked, they were like, okay, so y'all were talking about gumbo, and do you put okra in your gumbo?
Wisdom?
I think it might have been wisdom.
No, she said tomatoes.
Was it tomatoes? Somebody asked about okra.
Oh.
And you said don't nobody put no okra in the gumbo.
No, that was tomatoes.
Was it tomato? No, I think they said, okay, well, either way, they were asking about different ingredients and stuff like that in the gumbo. And I just thought that
and
it was
just like
funny.
If you
that
make
comment made me laugh.
And then you put some, like, okay, we ain't going to do rice. You know, y'all usually do red beans. I'm still going to do that, but we're going to do some quinoa. And that's going to be for the last day of Mardi Gras, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, when people got their mouth all right for some rice or whatever.
Exactly. For Good Friday, what we going to do is we going to take some conch or something. No, we're not doing that in the boil.
A conch boil.
But she had some grits and stuff, and I don't know if that's part of Italian, but I guess they were trying to make it
show
like she
her
was
that
adding.
she added, she brought to the table her attributes and stuff like that.
And then at the end, she'd been lying this whole time, this big elaborate story, and then everybody just accept her on a dime, right? The father, the grandmother, everybody. Oh, okay, now just go be with this other guy who you spent time with and who you love.
Our other son.
Yeah.
But the thing I thought about all of that too is that instead of judging her personally for all of this, what they realized was the joy she brought to the family. She helped bring their son back to them. They were happy
in
about
modern
that.
times. It's a black woman's burden to make a white family happy. And at the same time, it's a white savior family edition, right? The two black characters were saved by this family. She didn't have a family. She didn't have nothing. She showed up there with nothing, and they saved her just like they saved the previous black guy.
But he wasn't exactly saved because he was a member of the family.
All right, okay. That's a technicality.
I mean, yeah.
The two black people have only a white family now after all is said and done, right?
Yeah.
Even though her friend in New York wanted to help her. Claire.
Yeah, she was like, just come on back, girl. I'll
get you a room at the hotel I work at and all that, right?
We could find you someplace else to house it,
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's
I don't know.
Savior.
I don't want to think about that as a film. When y'all see it, go ahead and chime in and because I feel
that's our job.
But then that's gonna make me not like it as much, like what you said in the beginning. And I kind of like the movie if I'm not thinking about all of that.
Things in them
but yeah, you're
wrong,
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But let us know if you've seen this film. Let us know if you plan on seeing the movie. And if you've seen it, what did you think about it? And if you're watching this later, let us know as all of this stuff as well. And if you have other stuff you want to talk about that we didn't talk about, that'll be more appropriate once more people have seen it, let us know in the comments and maybe we'll do another video on this.
And tell us if you want to hear about The Drama with Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, and Mamadou Athie. I think that's how you say his name.
Ooh. Yeah, the movie, The Drama, because we're going to definitely go see it now. Whether we talk about it with y'all is going to depend on whether y'all want to see this or not.
Yep.
But all in all, y'all should see this if you like rom-coms.
If you made it this far, type Bruzzin in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And be sure to check out one of the videos that's on the screen right now. And also be sure to visit axiom.app for all of our videos in one place with links to them back on YouTube so that you can watch them here.